Hello and welcome to the In Spite of Everything podcast. I am Yael, and if you're in the mood to play a mindless arcade game, then maybe check out my first completed game, Shots, on the Sierra Arcade. Now, our guest today is making much more elaborate and eloquent things than Shots. He has worked in the game industry for about 7 years professionally and is currently independently developing a game of his own, Mighty Goose. He is known on the interwebs as Rilem, but to his family and flocks of geese all around the Netherlands, he is Richard Lems. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, you.
Very glad to have
nice
you.
Nice to be
here. Classic game. Do you have a classic game that you still revisit to this day?
Well, yeah, Metal Slug, obviously.
Do you still play Metal Slug?
Yeah, of course.
That's pretty cool.
Now and then. Just one of those games you can just pick up and... Although it's the same every time, it's just fun.
No, it is also gorgeous to look at.
Exactly.
I'm taking it you're playing it on an emulator.
Yeah, yeah. I don't have a Neo Geo.
Right.
Actually, all of the official ports are also running on an emulator, I think.
Oh.
Not 100% sure about that, but...
Huh. I believe you. So you you always work remotely, or at least before. I mean, you said you worked in the industry for years. You were working remotely, freelance. You weren't going into a place.
No. Just in the Netherlands. I worked at a company called Q42 for a while, and they at one point they started making games, and they needed an artist, so they recruited me. And we tried to make some puzzle games for mobile phones and stuff, but it didn't really work out. So in the meantime, I was working together with with one of my buddies, Benjamin, who also was working at that company, and we actually started a new company about 3 years ago, which is called Turtle Blaze.
Oh,
and yeah, we made Road Warriors for the phone, which is a side-scrolling racing game inspired by games like Sonic and anime such as Redline. Those are really big inspirations, and that game was all about going really fast and focusing on the intense feeling of speed, and we pretty much nailed that, I think. I'm pretty happy with the result. And now we're working on a ninja action platformer, a Metroidvania actually, called Kunai, and it's still in development. We're building that for PC and Switch.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, it's well underway.
What are you building it in? What Unity or Construct or?
We're building Kunai in Unity, but for my personal projects, I prefer Construct because I'm not a programmer. Programming is not my trade. It's more of a thing I picked up on the side, and Construct really eliminates any technical boundaries you might encounter. It's just you open the thing and you go.
Yep, that's why I'm here. That's pretty cool though. It's just you and another person, so it's sort of
we started out as two people, and currently we're working with 2 interns, and we've got another friend who's helping out on the producing side, who's helping out part-time. So currently we're 5 people. And we're having tons of fun making that Metroidvania because it's also a genre we all love.
That's very cool. You have years of experience working in the game industry. At what point did you decide that you had to make games with your own vision?
Well, I've always been doing that, like on the side, like in Ludum Dare and Game Boy Jam. Like when a game jam popped up on the calendar, I'd just make sure I was available to compete, because those were the moments where I'd had like the most fun during the game jams. And at one point I realized I want more of that in my life, and it's not something like I'm building games with my friends, but I also want to make games
right.
on my own. It's a bit of a weird situation, but at one point I just realized I need something else, something like I want to make games on my own, and just have fun with it in another way.
Yeah, there's something about like experimenting and just sort of not having any boundaries, or I don't know. a creative outlet, even if it's stupid.
Yeah, exactly. If I want to make a stupid painting, I can just do it.
Right.
Like if you're making a painting with like 3 people, then you can't just like,
Right.
you can't just add a goose or something, you know.
Yeah. So for those not familiar with your current project, Mighty Goose, can you describe a little bit about what it is and maybe the gameplay and the artistic vision?
Mighty Goose is a fast-paced run-and-gun arcade shooter, and it's inspired by arcade classics such as Metal Slug and Contra. And the goal of the game is to clear all levels and defeat the final boss. And in these levels, you'll just be walking from left to right, super old school, and blowing everything up. And really typically like a get good style game. Like you can die
Yeah.
very easily because there's projectiles coming from every direction. It's going to be a demanding game, but not too unfair. I'd like it to be fair. And when you die, you just have to start over. I want to keep it simple.
Yeah.
So the design stays simple for me also.
Why did you decide to choose a goose?
Well, that's totally random, actually.
It is original. I'll give you that.
Yeah,
and it's fun.
I've got this I've got tons of little drawing books full of sketches, and this was one of the characters that I sketched down one day. Jokingly, I put it online and said, "This is going to be the new action hero." And well, the more and more I looked at it, the more it grew on me, you know.
Yeah.
So I started making a mock-up, and it just clicked.
Yeah. No, it looks really fun. I can't wait to play it. But you're doing this pretty much all on your own, other than the composer, which you just recently said was Dominic Nemanic or
Dominic Nidmark.
Nidmark. Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Totally blew it, Dominic. I'm sorry if you're listening. You're probably going to not give me an answer to this, but do you have a timeline in your head that you think is realistic that you're going to finish this by?
Well, I really want to finish it this year, and I'd say it's realistic because I'm working in Construct. If I was working in Unity, I would say it's not very realistic. But you know, Construct, you can go really fast once you've got the art done. You can just go add events, and in no time you're building features.
Yeah, you can get going. Even if you didn't start with the art and you just had little blocks, you could get a ton of mechanic. It's like you flying in the art later is not that difficult. That's subjective, but to me, I don't think it's that difficult. Really cool, really exciting. I can't wait to play it. It looks pretty fun. As far as your relationship on your other games, what is sort of your role with your company? Are you more of a game designer and mostly artist, or what is sort of your dynamic with them?
You mean in Turtle Blaze?
Yeah.
I don't really like to put people in boxes because we're a really small team, so we switch the designer hat a lot of the time.
It's a lot more collaborative.
Yeah, exactly. There's not one game designer who says we're gonna make this.
Yeah.
That's not how we roll. Like it's more like a group of friends having fun together, and the next day someone comes up with the idea of we need a giant mech in the final battle, and if everybody thinks it's okay, then we do it.
I like that style. It sounds like there's a lot of creative freedom.
Yeah, true.
Which is pretty important. You're doing this full time?
Making games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great.
It is.
So for those who are trying to do this, I get a lot of people that ask how they can get into doing this consistently or full time. Do you have any advice for them?
Oh, that's a really difficult question.
Yeah, sorry.
It depends on a lot of things, but if you need to think on that a bit.
Yeah, we can come back to it.
No, I want to answer it. I have an opinion on this. Like if you're still in school, I mean that would be the ideal time to just make a company and try to actually sell a game, because you're in an environment where you can still like fail. When you're young, I'd really recommend trying to do these things as much as possible when you're young. And if you're a bit older, I'd say get a job, get good, and work your ass off in your spare time and support yourself with your job. So when you do release that game, it's okay to fail, and then you can learn from your failures and try again. And otherwise, you might not be able to try again. So yeah, that's my 2 cents. I don't know if that's a really good tip.
I think it is. Like, my first trade was I was an electrician, and I did not like it, but it was a fallback, and it allowed me to save up money to go to school to actually do what I wanted to do. So I do feel like there's something in working hard, working hard and having a fallback, and just, I mean, if you're going to do it, you're going to bust your ass, and you're going to make a place for yourself.
Exactly. When I started out making games, I used to deliver mail that was my job. And during my rounds of delivering the mail, I would just brainstorm about what I was going to make. And then when I got home, it was time to go. And then, I made stuff and it didn't end up going anywhere, but at least I learned a lot. And I think it really contributed to where I am now, just trying and failing a lot of times.
Yeah. I hate saying it because it feels lame, but you do need to fail a lot to succeed.
Yeah.
Probably over and over. Otherwise, you have no way of learning or knowing what's dumb or what's a waste of your time.
Yeah. One other tip I'd like to give is just go to events, meet people, learn from them. It's something I had neglected for a long time because I'm really much more of an introvert person, and I was always in a kind of mindset where I was like, oh, I'll show them. I'll just sit in my bedroom and program for 24 hours straight, and then I'll make tons of money. But it really doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Believe it or not, hiding out in your room doesn't work out.
Yeah.
Can I ask what sort of meetings or events would you go to? I'm guilty. I've never been to a convention or even a local developer group or whatever.
Well, if you have local developer groups, that's great. That's a great place to start. That's a low barrier of entry because like bigger events, they could cost a lot, especially if you live far away from them.
Yeah.
I'm lucky enough to live pretty much next to Germany, so I could just hop on the train whenever Gamescom's coming up. I could be there like in a few hours. GDC is obviously a place to be, but it's pretty expensive, so I don't know.
Did you go this year?
No, I didn't, but my colleagues did.
Okay. I don't know what I would do. If I went, is it more would you say to communicate with other people that are developing games, just to sort of meet face to face with people, or is there some learning that's happening?
Yeah, well, it depends on your goal. You know, if you're looking for a publisher to get more coverage for your game, or if you're looking for a composer or whatever.
So even publishers?
Definitely publishers.
Okay.
And if you decide to go to such an event, decide so way in advance and try to set up an appointment before you go, because like meeting them there face to face by chance is really not something that's likely to happen. You'd be better off just trying to make sure you're going to meet them. Yeah.
So did you, before the Mighty Goose and before you started your team, did you sort of learn a lot of what you know? You worked in the industry doing other things for a while, so that's probably where you learned it. Never mind. I realize that question is stupid now.
What?
I was going to ask basically how you learned what you know, because when I talk to people like on the Discord server or something, a lot of times people are like, oh, you don't know like web development. And I'm like, no, I don't have a background in web development or like HTML. I don't know any of that. I've just sort of learned, I've learned through Construct how Construct works. And that's sort of the beauty of it. But also like, you know, I don't have any sort of prior knowledge that I can sort of dip into.
Yeah. I see. Well, actually, I was like, how do I put this? I was always that kid that never played outside.
Always?
Yeah, always. So, you know, what I did was I sat on the computer the entire day and just mess around with cracked software, and that's where I got the background knowledge from.
From messing around with cracked software.
Yeah, just
downloading songs on Napster.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man.
Because have you played around with other game making software?
I have. I tried. No one's ever heard of this, by the way. But Old Hamster Republic. That name sounds bananas. Yeah. But it was like it's still out there today, and I think I used it. Gosh, this must have been like early 2000s, so like 2004
The RPG creation
or something. Engine. Yeah, and it was super simple. I mean, it's really, I felt at the time anyway. I haven't used it since, but it's really limited. The graphics are really limited. But if you don't know anything and you don't want to code at all, I thought it was a good way to get me, just to see if I thought it was interesting. But it's an RPG maker, and RPGs are really hard to make, even with the easiest software. So that's where I started. And then I didn't really love it. Then I tried Game Maker. I tried Game Salad.
Did you actually try RPG Maker?
I did not try RPG Maker, but that's partly because I tried OHR first, and then I realized I don't want to have to write this crazy long story and make a combat system, and just everything sort of hit me that it was too big of an idea, even in the easiest software. It was just too much of a project. So I didn't mess with RPG. Did you play with RPG Maker?
Yeah, it was really cool. It was just like I didn't really make any finished stories because like you said, it's really ambitious. But just playing around with it's like an actual game.
Oh, really?
No, it feels like that.
It's basically the engine's already there. You're just like
you just draw the map and place little trees and place your NPCs and type in what they're gonna say. It's really fun.
Wow. Well, then I have a friend who's like basically trying to do that. So maybe what you just said will sell him on that because he doesn't want to do any sort of coding and construct or anything. I also
RPG Maker.
Yeah, RPG Maker. I also tried a little bit of Unity, but that was just like I was like, you know what? No, mono-develop and that whole thing was more than. And plus 3D, like you said. The moment you like add another dimension and then you're thinking about all these other things and it just becomes an even bigger ambitious goal. Yeah. Now I need to find a modeler and now these animations are weird and it's like just this. My character's rigged wrong. It's just there's so many more elements and you know in 2D it's just you can pretty much sketch something up in A-Sprite fairly quickly versus thinking about it from 3 dimensions. Although I guess in 3 dimensions, then you can build it something once, and then you can just rotate it and change it to the angle you want and light it differently. But still, again, that's like a lot more knowledge you have to have and a lot more tools.
You can make it as simple as you want, but the rabbit hole of Unity goes really deep. There's thousands of things you could do. There's infinite possibilities because if it doesn't exist, you can just code it. Sometimes constraints are nice.
Yeah. Mike Parent said on the first episode, the Christmas list. That's exactly what happens. I've heard that. Yeah, it's exactly what happens. You just like, oh, I can add this. It's not cool enough. I can add this other thing. And then it just becomes like, it's a rabbit hole. So Mighty Goose, 500 global variables or dictionary or other.
Other.
Yeah? Got a combination of stuff going on?
Families.
Yeah.
Families are nice.
I know it's probably going to be hard to think of off the top of your head because you're not looking at it. How do you sort of have your family set up? Do you have stacks and stacks of families?
I think I have about 10 right now. It's okay, but the more the project progresses, the more families you'll end up with. And the thing that bothers me most is that you can't change the family icon. I mean,
that's true. You know what? Hey, Tom and Ashley, if you're listening. We would like to have images for the families.
Exactly.
I don't know if
that would be a godsend.
I could see that sort of being an issue maybe, but it would be nice to not have to look through. You do sort of get spoiled by seeing a little image next to, whatever the object is when you're making events and actions.
Yeah.
It would be nice to have it on the families. Look at you, man. Genius.
So let me open up the project.
Yeah,
I have my family set up in a really simple way. Like there's an enemy's family, and what that family does is basically it just tracks like things like health, the combat distance, if they are in range, stuff like that. And everything that falls under that family just benefits from the one time you write that logic. And apart from that, I have a platformer family, which contains all of the characters that can do platforming. So that family has the platforming behavior, and they have their own settings and stuff. Below all the global logic that applies to the families is, I'd call it a subclass. There's specific logic for the grenade thrower type enemy.
Right.
There's specific logic for I have these small bugs that run on the ground, but they all benefit from the same overlapping code for the platformer behavior family.
Do you have mixed behavior? Do you have like a physics and platformer behavior, for instance, or I'm sorry, like 8-directional or anything like that? That's also mixed with physics. I've had some issues lately with trying to do anything mixed like that, like making a physics platformer, like making stairs.
Yeah, that's difficult because like all the default behaviors, like the bullet behavior, the 8-direction behavior, stuff like that, they are different from the physics behavior.
Yeah.
And the physics behavior doesn't know about the actual speed variables in the platformer behavior, for example. So when your platformer behavior thinks the character is moving at 200 pixels per second, the physics behavior will still think it's moving at 0 pixels per second, and that's conflicting with each other. So if you want to do something like a physics-based platformer, I think the best way to do that would actually move the character through physics, like applying force towards left, right, and up, and kind of mapping out your own platformer behavior using the physics.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I was recently working on like a game that I put the brakes on that was like did you ever play Overcooked?
No, but I've seen it.
Okay, it sort of would play like I wanted it to play like that. It's like you're a bunch of little firefighters and you're running around through a house and you're trying to throw people out the window and rescue them, and it's just goofy. Yeah. And I wanted it, to be like it would be hilarious if you were just throwing people out windows. And you're doing it as a team, like, hey, and people are like smashing windows out for you and you're throwing people out. But I kept running into issues, just like, because you need to climb the stairs and clearly it's going to be physics if you want the comedy. You want people to be sort of flopping around. And then it was like just grabbing someone and throwing them was a problem. Cause then you need to
switch off switch off the physics
as you grab
when he gets on the
stuff.
ladder.
Yeah. Anytime you collide, you have to turn it off, and then when you turn it on, you get this explosion of energy because they're colliding, and it's just like God, just yeah. I mean, I got it playable, but then it was just like, man, this took forever to work out these little things, and I have so many more things to do, and I just like, this is probably bigger than what I need. Someone else. I need someone who's like a programmer. Who can actually spend time on this, and I'm not that right now. I need more experience, and so I put the brakes on it. You said you have like a proximity detection, or I don't remember what you called it, range.
Yeah, exactly. An aggro radius, like when.
Do you have like a sprite that you're using to detect that, or are you using like if within offset or? No,
for this game I can do that, but also I think the line of sight behavior can do can do a circle, I think, but I don't know for sure. But for this game, just simply checking if they're above a certain X value, it's pretty much fine.
So how far has Mighty Goose been in development? Or I'm sorry, how long since the beginning, since you started the idea and then till now?
Well, that's easy because I started 1st of January.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, about 4 months.
Wow.
5. We're nearing the end of the month.
Wow. So far, have you had any hurdles or issues that you're still sort of trying to solve, or that you already have solved that you would like to share with us?
Yeah, sure. So in the beginning of the project, I started out with a small screen resolution, like with the default screen resolution that Construct uses when you make a retro project, because that scales up nicely to 720p and 1080p.
Yeah, it's like 800 something.
Yeah. So during playtesting, I just I just noticed there wasn't enough space. Like enemies are throwing grenades, and I want the player to be able to react to them. I want the player to be able to like make a few steps to the left or the right to avoid them. But in that setup, there just wasn't enough space. So I simply made the screen size bigger.
I see.
That was the fix.
Yeah.
Yeah, not really seeing any hurdles on. No, not really. That's mostly due to that. Like I'm making a Metal Slug clone, so
yeah, it's always moving. Is it a continuous scrolling level?
No. It's not continuous scrolling. It has like these segments that lock. So when you enter a certain zone, the camera locks, and enemies will start pouring out from left, right, top, whatever, and you have to clear the area before you can scroll again.
Is it multiplayer?
Yeah, like 2-player. I'm going for 2-player, but I don't know. Yeah, Metal Slug is also 2-player, I think.
2-player local?
Yeah, exactly.
And you're planning on using the gamepads?
Yeah.
Have you made anything before using the gamepads out of Construct that you've published?
Yeah, some of my Game Jam games have support for them.
I'm curious how that translates to Xbox or PlayStation, like the consoles. The moment you start using the because I've noticed every controller that I plug in has a different layout.
Oh, really?
I bought a Xbox controller off of Amazon, and when I use the default button maps that Construct uses, it doesn't read it right.
Oh, really? That's weird.
Yeah, and so I have to like custom add everything, and then I'm like, ugh, if I have to do all this,
that sucks.
yeah, and then I'm like, if I have to do all this for this controller, like how much of this is just, going to be a pain later if I
really haven't experienced that. Even with the Chinese brand controllers, they mostly just map to the standard Xbox layout.
If you set up the A, B, X, Y, they're all correct.
Yeah,
and the analog stick. I noticed the biggest issue I had was with the D-pad. That's where it got weird.
Well, I'm
not trying to scare you, by the way.
Well, now that we're talking about hurdles, I have to make some kind of input manager at some point because there are people who would like to rebind their keys. So
yeah, that's another thing.
That's gonna suck.
Yeah.
I wish Skira would make something for that. That would be sweet.
That would be a cool template to throw up.
Yeah.
I know that there are websites that test all that stuff, but I did notice that when you try to map the controller, or whenever you can get information from the controller, you can get its ID. And I feel like there's got to be a database out there of just controller IDs that can be referenced on opening or when plugged in, and then sort of maps to available buttons on that. I don't know. Maybe there's not. Maybe that's too much of an undertaking, but
yeah.
I guess the easiest way to do that or solve that would just be to allow people to customly map it.
Exactly.
So maybe that would be dumb. But are there any tips and tricks to succeed or hurdles to overcome the incomplete game struggle? Because I think all of us have made little prototypes and we have a hard time finishing them, right? This is like everybody.
I have a good tip. Get someone to hold you accountable. like not you. If you set a deadline in your agenda, well, that's the first step. But if you actually get someone else to hold you accountable, like you'd damn it, English. Get someone and help me out here, man.
Yeah. Like, so in your case, who is the person that holds you accountable?
Yeah, that's a secret.
Okay. In my case, it's my wife, because she does not love me always doing this in my free time. So it better be good. If I'm going to be doing this in my free time, it better be good. And she better see real results.
Yeah, exactly. Do you show her?
I do. Unfortunately, the stuff, I've only been using this since last summer, and a lot of the stuff that I work on has been dumb or is just too ambitious, and then I have to put the brakes on it. It's happened twice now where I just realized, you know what, this is really cool, and I need like a year and a half, and I don't want to give a year and a half right now.
And have you ever competed in game jams?
I haven't.
That's really a good way to there's a forced deadline with game jams, so it's a really good way to get used to that pressure, that planning you got to go through. You got to finish something, or you'll have nothing.
I did recently finish a game. At the beginning of the podcast, I mentioned that I finished a game called Shots, which is a stupid basketball arcade game. It's not that stupid. It's still fun, but it's also just a total time killer type of game, and there's not a lot of soul to it. But it is complete. So that was sort of my first, 15 failed prototypes in a row, and that was I saw the vision. There was an end goal. I can do this in a month, and I'm going to pull the trigger on it. But I'd like to do something more.
Well, that's nice. That's that's a proper achievement, like finishing a game. That's difficult.
It is, and I still had problems with it when I put it up. I was like, damn it, it's not like some of the. I realized that when I put it on the Secure Arcade because I needed the leaderboard, and then I realized that I had to set everything back to C2 runtime, and I was like, oh. I had to go back and remove all my BBC code stuff and I don't remember what else, but there was a list of things when I tried to do that I needed to fix.
Damn.
Yeah, but I think
time to go back to the Hamster Republic.
Yeah, no way am I going back to that. I'm telling you, you look at that Hamster Republic. I mean, maybe it's different now, but when you look at it, it might look like 16 pixels is all you got to work with on every sprite, and that's hard to go back to. The moment, man, it's real hard to go back to that. It's like early Atari. I can't do it. Even old Pac-Man, I can't do anymore. Like OG Pac-Man. And I know it doesn't matter that much. The game's still the same, but that polished look. You recently announced the composer for Mighty Goose will be Dominic Nenmark. How did you go about finding and deciding to add him to the team?
Actually, a friend. I have this group of patrons who support me on Patreon.
Okay.
And one of them had a friend who was Dominic, and he was like, "Oh, dude, I got to show him this project of yours because he's looking for work." So yeah, and he kind of loved it because it had a goose. So.
I heard the music and I was like, "This is going to be perfect for it." But I was like, I was wondering if you were scouring the internets for somebody like him, or if you
no,
just
it was
happened
just
to know.
Coincidence.
Very cool. Worked out.
It was fate.
It was fate. And so, I mean, have you worked with a composer before? That probably sounds dumb, but have you worked with a composer before?
Yeah, I've worked with Shannon Mason, also known as Pongball, for everything up until now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So whenever you're working with them, what is your relationship like? How do you describe what you want? You just sort of give them reference material, like a motion?
Yeah. If it's possible, I'll give them a build of the game. But for Mighty Goose, I like to make mock-ups also for myself, just to get a really rough feeling of what an environment is going to look like. And I just hand them the mock-up and...
Interesting. No reference material? Or no reference music?
Well, I used to look up lots of reference music, but these days I'm more like I want to give the artist, the composer, like a free reign on a fresh look. I want to hear their interpretation. I don't want to steer them in any direction beforehand. I just want them to do their thing.
You are a composer's best friend because they all want that. A lot of people get stuck with the reference stuff. They end up having to imitate.
Yeah, they just
songs.
need to make a clone. That sucks.
Yeah. I don't want to make a rip-off of a Tupac song. I just want to make a good song. Yeah, they're gonna love you. So
I might give them a subtle direction of what I think is cool and might fit, but in Mighty Goose, there's gonna be a super mode in which he turns into a super goose.
Yeah.
And I think it would be really cool if there would be another layer of soundtrack on top of the normal soundtrack that is Eurobeat. I don't know if you're familiar with the genre.
It is super high BPM, 140 or something crazy.
Yeah, it's insane energy, and it just makes up for a hilarious combination. And so that's the subtle direction I give, but other than that, I just give them free reign.
Very cool. Man, I'm really excited to see how it turns out. How soon are you planning on playtesting this thing? And if you are, how are you finding people to test this and give you feedback?
I am playtesting now with my patrons on Patreon.
Okay.
I did an alpha version of the game with a little test level, just the basic mechanics, like 5 different enemies in that level and a few power-ups for the players to play with. And I just give that to my patrons for now.
Yeah.
And they're enough for now.
Yeah, that's actually a great idea. A lot of times, right, you're looking for feedback, and if you just ask any Dick or Jane, they're going to give you. They may not really connect with your game that much, and so they're just going to give you the feedback that they have, but they may not be your target audience, and some of the feedback that they give you might not be that valuable.
Yeah, true.
But in your case, there are people that want to play it.
Yeah, true. And also, I've experienced that when you give it to a random stranger, they might not be inclined to like give you really bad feedback. It's
good.
Always like this. It's always politeness
Right.
that gets in the way of the real feedback, and you'll have to like look at their gameplay or record their gameplay to actually get something out of it. But like the patronage kind of takes that barrier away.
Yeah.
People, can just say what they really think.
Yeah. These controls are clunky, man. Fix it.
Yeah, it sucks. The game sucks. Lol.
I hope they're not that big of a jerk.
No.
I would just start from scratch, Richard.
It's great, but lose the goose.
Yeah, right. Maybe turn him into a turkey. I like turkeys better. Mighty turkey.
Well, actually, when he dies, he turns into a into like this turkey sprite. It's really true.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
He turns into a turkey?
Yeah.
What? Man, I gotta see this. I might become a patron.
Oh.
I don't know how my wife will feel about that, but I might. Well, I really appreciate you spending your time with me. It's been fun. If you'd like to stay in touch with Richard's progress with Mighty Goose, among other things, you can become a patron on his Patreon page, patreon.com/Rylem.
Exactly. Rylem.
Rilem. Or you can follow him on Twitter as Rylem Twit, which I don't know why you decided to put Twit in your in your name. But it is at Rilem. Twit, as in Twitter.
Yeah.
I hope as in Twitter. Yeah. And for all you listening, thank you. And if you have questions you'd like to ask on future podcasts, or if you'd like to recommend a guest to be on the podcast, you can email me at isoepodcast@gmail.com. And if you haven't already, follow at isopodcast on Twitter to stay up to date with new episodes and occasional banter. And until next time, happy constructing.